कि आप करोगे?
I've had.
Okay.
I'm just going to go home and have some little whatever.
आपका क्या अभी चेंज वगैरह हो गया है डाइट?
No, not really. Same standards.
Same.
I have not changed anything.
आपका एज कितना है?
I am 59, born in 1963.
59, okay.
Born in 1963.
आपका एजिंग एकदम अच्छा हुआ है. You've
In the
taken
sense-
care of yourself very well.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been lucky.
Yeah, but at young age में you did like exercise and all.
Not really. I always had this body structure.
Okay.
It's not that I had a very different body structure, but especially during my college days, I was very active physically.
Okay.
So playing football.
So you like playing sports?
Yeah, I like sports. I still like sports.
You watch?
I also watch, but not so much. But it reduced in between. But now I realize that it's important to sometimes do what you like to do also, and not get too restrictive and constrictive because of other practices. So I genuinely like watching, and so now with Nimai, with my son,
So you watch?
we watch football. I don't like cricket too much because I find it a little boring.
Yeah, it's quite long.
Yes,
So
quite
it's a
long.
big commitment.
Yes.
7
So, but
hours.
football, yes. Tennis.
Okay, tennis you watch.
We like watching tennis together, and also otherwise, and we play tennis together also. Nimai and
You play
myself.
here,
Yeah, we
actually.
play here sometimes.
Tennis
But-
में who do you like?
Tennis, mein, well, it's a mixed bag, but overall, Federer because of personality
longevity,
and personality overall. Otherwise, Nadal in terms of as a good player, athlete.
Athlete, he was exceptional. Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you meet this Peter Burwash when he had come?
No, I unfortunately didn't know about his.
But you knew him as a tennis player, or like?
No, I knew him because a little bit about him as a tennis player because the book that I read.
Yeah, yes.
There are two books. So when I read those, I came to know of his tennis exploits, but I couldn't meet him.
You were there here only, Prabhuji, or you were like abroad somewhere when he had come?
When did he come? I didn't know when
He had come, I think, like late 2000s, like 2008-9 maybe somewhere or somewhere.
2008-9. I need to think where I was, because I've actually stayed in during my younger years. I've stayed in multiple countries, and during my work years also I stayed in multiple countries. So in 2008, 2009, I need to recall where I was, but I didn't meet him. Actually, I didn't know about his trip.
Yes. I know. I think even when he was like, he came for Sunday feast, like many people didn't know.
Okay.
It's like Roger Federer coming 20 years down the line
Right.
for some Sunday feast, and people might not know how great he was at that time.
Yeah.
True. So you said, Roji, like I think my father was also telling me Dubai, Russia, and all this thing. So I wanted to actually learn from you. Dubai, mein, what was your experience? I was there recently, that's why I'm asking. Just wanted to understand.
Well, I was there about 3-4 years before you went, or maybe 5 years before you were there. And it's
So
not
that
really,
is still recent, I mean.
it's still,
Yeah.
That was my last active posting or engagement in professional life. I'm still actively engaged in terms of like as a director with an IoT company, but that time it was like a full-time engagement. Now I'm part-time involved, and I was posted in Dubai, but I was handling Dubai, basically the Dubai Middle East region for the company, and our two large businesses were from revenues were coming from UAE and from Saudi Arabia. So I used to shuttle between Dubai and Riyadh. We had an office in Riyadh. We also had a guest house there.
So you were alone, or?
I was alone. Family was here. Nimai at that time was just about to getting ready for his preparation for college. So Preeti couldn't come, and
Entrance
then
exams.
she entrance exams. And Preeti is a doctor doing practice there and so on. But since we also have an office in Bombay,
Mataji had a clinic also, right? That time?
yes, she had she still has a clinic, but
Yeah.
she was running her own clinic,
Yeah.
and so I used to come a lot to Bombay. at
So
that
you
time.
kept traveling like.
I used to come. Yeah, it was Bombay, Riyadh, Dubai. Every 1.5 months, that would be my circuit.
Constant.
It was
And
because we
then-
have an office in Bombay and Bangalore, so
yes.
there was work happening from here too.
You went to Bangalore also in between?
Not so much, but Bombay, and being in Dubai, I was still handling the India operations of our business.
Right.
So I would come here to meet customers. So Dubai. So to answer your question, Dubai was a very different experience compared to because I've done business in let's say I've professionally been engaged in work in Russia, in Africa. We did a little bit of exports to US. That was long time back, but the Middle East experience is very different compared to all the other countries, and especially in Dubai, I learned that you have to. They expect and they respect physical interaction.
Right.
You being there, you being present, trying to meet the customer. Well, in so many other countries, you can do business remotely.
Yeah. Especially now with the post-COVID environment, it's like become norm almost.
Right.
Yeah.
But Dubai still they valued physical relationships and physical interaction, especially for closing business.
Right.
And second thing also that we learned about the UAE business or the Middle East business is that they adopt cutting edge whatever they do.
Yeah, they want the best.
They want the best, right? In terms of hardware, software, user experience, everything they want cutting edge. And in the Middle East, you are competing against the best in the world.
Yeah, I think all the top companies.
All the top companies, whether American, European, everybody's there. So in that sense, it's a competitive landscape. Pricing is also very competitive in the Middle East, right?
Is that where you connected Quinton also?
Pardon me?
Quinton, you connected Quinton from QD Tech?
No, I connected with him from here.
No, because he had some projects from Middle East also. Same.
No, so my connection was through Dr. Dongre.
Oh, Vinny Dongre, okay.
Dr. Vinny Dongre, he knew him, and that's how I connected.
He was also working like IoT based projects for
Right.
like Saudi and Dubai and all for tracking related things.
Right.
Yeah. So I thought there was some connection.
No, this is a recent connection, about 3-4 years ago.
Ah.
And then Saudi was a very mixed bag. Saudi is not an easy place to do business, and their mindset is very different from the Middle East. Social customs, food habits is also a challenge. But one thing, though it's not connected to business, but one thing I very much appreciate in Saudi is their I'm trying to think of the right word, but they're very serious about the spiritual practices.
Yeah.
Right? And I, so externally, till you don't go there, one thinks that it's superficial. But once you go there, you realize that it's not superficial.
Yes.
They are very nice people, but they're extremely serious about the spiritual practices. And it helped me boost up my spiritual practice also.
Right.
So in the morning, you're woken up by the prayers,
the prayers.
and I realized that why not look at it positively, right, rather than thinking as a disturbance. So if you look at it positively, it suddenly opened up a new realm.
Right.
So here I don't get up. Here I get up by morning alarm. There my morning alarm was
Automatic,
prayers. Was prayers, and I really appreciate that.
I had the same experience, but I think like what you are saying, I had a similar experience. The faith really moves you.
Yes, it really moves you.
I think when you went, Fridays and Saturdays were their weekends, right? And Sunday was the first day of the week.
Yes.
So when I went, they had just shifted it to Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
But on Fridays, the way they had managed it was first half you can work,
Right.
and then I think afternoon Friday they have like a big prayer.
Yeah.
And I remember being there on a Friday, and everyone on the streets used to come out from wherever they were and go into the local mosque
Right.
and pray for like hour and a half or something like that.
Right.
And it was really like a moving experience. I was like, I wish we were surrounded like this, and we had that faith to go to temple so
Yes.
strictly, no matter what.
Yes.
Even the ladies, we had few ladies who used to work in the office. They used to pray in the office for the whole time, no matter. So like for their faith is like, I don't know much about their practices, but just watching them moves you automatically.
True. And the other very positive experience I had in Saudi was food is a challenge there, and I have a slightly different diet
Yeah.
because also of my the setup of my stomach, my digestive system. So I tend to avoid too spicy, too oily foods, and which have onion, garlic in them.
Yeah.
So finding that in the Middle East was a challenge. And there were these couple of taxi drivers. So I used to regularly use taxi over there as the mode of transport, and I got friendly with a few of the taxi drivers, both in Riyadh and in Jeddah. And I kind of told them after being with them for a few days that, look, can you help me find a pure veg without onion garlic restaurant? And these are people from Pakistan, okay,
Right.
speak fluent Hindi, and he went out of his way. He said, Mr. Rathi, give me a few days. He went out of his way, he made inquiry, and then he took me to a few places which are Lebanese joints, where there was no non-veg, and I could also get a few dishes without onion garlic.
Right.
And I realized that
Like
the
restaurants.
but the reciprocity was there, that this person, he really identified with my need, and he went out of his way to help me. Right. So I remember that. It's really appreciative. Right. Irrespective of what they may be following, they are people who want to help others.
Yeah. No, their hospitality is something really to be appreciated of, no matter. I think that is one of the reasons why they are like rapidly like growing so much in today's world. Like, so they maintain their kind of cultural aspects, but
Yes.
simultaneously ensure that someone from another culture is accommodated within that.
Yes, you don't feel out of
Yeah,
place.
you don't feel out of place at all. That's true. But since we were on the topic, like I had a hard time. Of course, I'm newly married and all, but I had a hard time being away from the family and all these things.
Right.
How did you manage
Well, I have had past experience in that, because in the earlier part of my professional career, my professional engagements, I was in Russia for 3 years. But again, I was alone. Prerna was young; she was only, I think, 3 years. And
So this is long back.
this is long back.
Very
This is
good.
long. 1995.
Okay.
So
That's when I was born.
So at that time, there was a requirement that I had to be in Russia, some projects going on, and so I decided to go alone, and thinking that it was supposed to be a 6-month or a 1-year project actually, but extended to 3 years. But again, I used to come back frequently. But there
How
also.
long is that flight?
The Russia flight, flight to Moscow that time from Mumbai used to be about 5 hours.
Oh, that's not too bad.
It's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. Yeah, Moscow is not too bad. So when I was in Russia, in Moscow, as I said, I was there for 3 odd years. I was learning the language.
You can speak now?
I speak Russian.
Oh wow.
Ruskiya pagavari. And I, in fact, my Russian is better than my Marathi. because I learned Russian, I think, the right way. Marathi, though, it was I learned it just for heard, and it was just for passing, getting marks, passing marks. And also during part of my high school period, part of my education was in Bombay, and my 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th was in Singapore. So there was no Marathi. As a second language, it was not compulsory. I could get away with that. So and my 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade was in US.
Oh, okay. So all over the
place, and so therefore my exposure to Marathi was only 3-4 years, and that too just to get passing marks. So I landed up being more fluent in Russian, And so because of those kind of, so it was pretty intense. There was a lot of work. I was learning Russian. I was also traveling fairly in Russia. And so we could somehow manage. I could stay alone. Preeti came a few times, of course. She set up the kitchen. She taught me how to cook. And she did all that. There was a elderly maid who used to come, and she taught her also how to cook, a Russian maid. And so overall, so because of that experience,
it was a little like
it was much easier for me to manage my.
I think and like traveling from there to here is also a lot more easier than a flight from Moscow to.
Oh yes, oh yes, and there's a lot of good Indian restaurants and food available especially in Dubai.
Yeah, in Dubai, of course.
And then I had a lot of friends and some of my family. So my social circle, I could kind of very quickly establish. And then there was Harinam Anand Prabhu's, he had his network of people. So I got linked to that.
No, he's such a huge network, and he's very kind of
very welcoming,
very welcoming. Always asks you to come join the kirtan and all these things.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yes.
In Russia, when you went, Ruji, you were already practicing, like you were part of Krishna Consciousness?
Yes, so I was already initiated, fortunately. Otherwise, I when I look back, I don't think I would have survived in Russia. Staying alone, even though I was married, had a kid, it's very different there. And I'm really grateful for being connected to the movement, to manage and survive there alone.
What was the preaching situation like at that time?
There was a temple. I remember it was a temple in Begovaya, and it's shifted now. It's not there anymore. And there was a devotee there by the name of Sadhu Priya. He is Gopal Krishna Maharaj's disciple. So we were very close.
So Russian devotee?
He's he's from Bihar. He's from Gaya.
Okay.
And he was based there. And we were very close. We still are very close. And so I kind of latched on to him. We became good friends, and we would regularly go to colleges
for preaching,
to cultivate students. There was a group of Indian students who would come. We would all cook together. We would make Sunday lunch prasad together. So there was a very vibrant community, and in terms of festivals, in terms of book distribution, I still remember.
But was it in the open at that point? In Russia, or was it?
It was open. There was some restriction, but it was fairly open. Not what it is in the last 4 or 5 years, but at that time it was fairly open. There were not too many restrictions on the temple, so the temple could operate pretty freely.
Okay. That's nice.
So that was the for me, that was my saving grace. In Russia, the temple.
He's still there, the Prabhuji?
Sadhu Priya Prabhu is still there. He's married. He's got 3 kids and who are grown up now, and he's now taken Russian citizenship.
Okay.
So his Guru Maharaj, Gopal Krishna Maharaj wanted him to take. And another very positive thing happened because of me associated with him, is that when gurus would come, because a lot of the gurus would come, ISKCON sannyasis would come to Moscow, they would stay at his house. And he was so dedicated that his wife and kids would shift out somewhere else. That's why Sadhu Priya, I guess his name. And because this happened, and I was so close to him, that I could also associate with all. So Maharaj had come that time.
Wow.
A few times. Niranjan Swami Maharaj used to come. Devamrit Prabhu at that time, Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj, he used to come a few times. In fact, once I flew with him, we both flew together from Bombay to Moscow. And so from that perspective, it was a lot of nourishment.
He used to come for the college?
He used to come for general cultivation. Now, of course, he doesn't. But at that time, he made a few trips. He made a few trips at that time.
You said, Prabhuji, that first, second, third, fourth grade you did
in the US.
In the US.
In
then
Seattle.
You came to Mumbai.
Then I was born in Delhi.
Right.
In 1963.
Mathura?
No, in Delhi. In Delhi, 1960. My father is from Mathura.
Right.
But
did you do any of your growing up around there?
No, because my father was an aeronautical engineer, and he was working always outside Mathura. He was in Calcutta, in Delhi, then Bombay. So, most of my growing up has been a little bit in Delhi, then Bombay, then Seattle, Everett, that's Washington. Dad used to work for Boeing.
Oh wow, okay.
He worked there for 3-4 years, and then we came back again to Bombay, then Singapore, and then Chennai for 6 months in IIT.
What was Singapore like at that time?
Singapore.
Now people see it as like a very like a tourist thing, but what was it like?
It wasn't all that touristy at that time, but still it was a nice place for people to visit. I think when we were in Singapore, we used to have so many guests coming from Bombay. Relatives aate the, friends aate the, and they would stay with us. And
it was not developed like it is.
It wasn't, but it was still very attractive.
Okay.
Because food was never a problem in Singapore.
Right.
Food, especially for Indians and vegetarians, was never an issue. So that was very attractive, and it was clean, and it was quite expense-wise. It was also quite reasonable at the time. It's become very expensive now.
Oh, it's a premium.
It's a premium place, but at that time it was fairly okay. And I remember that. So there were a few places to see in Singapore: Sentosa Island, Jurong Bird Park, a few others. But we would also regularly cross the border and go to Malaysia, Johor Bahru, so and Genting Highlands. So there was a lot to do in Malaysia in terms of nature, natural beauty, which is not there in Singapore. Right? Singapore is like all man-made.
Yes.
Even their bird park is. I mean, you'll fall in love with it. I don't know if you've seen it, but the bird park is something unimaginable in terms of the way they made it, the high nets, everything that they have there. Again, Singapore, whatever they do in style.
Yes. I think Singapore was like the first Dubai, like before Dubai became the thing. Singapore was the place to be at that. At least when I was growing up, it was like that.
Yeah.
So Mumbai, then Singapore.
Yeah.
Then back to.
Then I was 6 months in IIT Chennai. I got into IIT from Singapore.
This is your college days.
This is my So I finished I did my A levels.
Right.
I did 11th, that is part of my A levels in Singapore, and then I got into IIT, and 6 months in Chennai, and then my father expired in 1980. So then, since my mother came back, father expired in Singapore. He was working in Singapore Airlines at that time. So since mother came back to Bombay, and I thought it was appropriate and important that I also join her since she was alone. My sister was already married in the US, so she was alone. So we took a transfer on compassionate grounds from Chennai to Bombay.
So within IIT?
Within IIT.
Okay.
So that was 1980. So since 1980 till now, it's been
Bombay,
except for Russia 3 years, Dubai, whatever.
Bombay being the central.
Bombay being the central. So I'm a Amchi Mumbai man. More or less.
So like 40 plus years in Mumbai only.
I don't like any other town. In fact, if I go to Mathura also, I can't stay more than 4 or 5 days.
Really?
5-6 दिन से ज़्यादा रह नहीं सकता हूँ. It's
very
difficult.
But you go back for like vacations and all.
Only vacation, especially Diwali.
Especially during Kartik time.
Yeah, at that time we were not. It was not so much about Kartik.
No, now we know, but yeah.
Now we know. At that time it was Diwali, and my grandmother was around at that time, and fantastic lady, and she was like the center of attraction for a family. All of us used to call her Bhabhi.
Your grandmother?
My grandmother, all ages, from Chota Bachu to my father.
I think that nickname sometimes sticks.
Correct. So she was like the highlight of our trips to Mathura, because even at her age, as a grandmother, she was still extremely bubbly and effervescent. Something like Aishwarya. Full of energy. Yes. We would play cards. We would do so many things. And she would cheat in playing cards. that was the beauty. हम लोग वो बैठती थी सामने एक mirror होता था. She could see in the mirror. And we could not imagine that our grandmother would do that. Right? So that way she was very jovial, and I have so fond memories of her.
So you went to Vrindavan during those times?
During those times, Vrindavan itna nahi jata. We used to go more for Govardhan Parikrama.
Okay, for Govardhan you
हाँ,
used to go.
वृंदावन में बिहारी जी we would go. Baki Bihari, and Krishna Balram temple was known as अंग्रेजों का मंदिर. So my grandmother would say वो अंग्रेजों का मंदिर है. She would go, but उनको लगता था ये अंग्रेजों का मंदिर है. तो कभी कभी जाते थे वहाँ पे. And then there was one Birla temple which is so we used to go to that frequently. I mean whenever we went to Vrindavan we go to Birla temple and we go to Bihari ji. But otherwise क्योंकि हम लोग मथुरा के थे, Dwarkadish was like a very regular affair. My grandmother would go to Dwarkadish.
But that faith was always there within the family.
In her, yes. I was an agnostic.
At that time.
At that time. Maybe I still am a little bit. But yes, I was an agnostic. I was an agnostic, but I had one.
Well, how did you feel if you felt internally you were agnostic, but you respected probably?
So that's what I was coming to. I shouldn't. Whatever you want to call it. I had one good quality, that whatever I was told to do in terms of religious practices, I would do with my full heart and soul, even though I didn't really believe. I still
you would put your effort.
Oh yeah, 100%, and better than people who believed. So I still remember when I was doing a project in Gothan in Rajasthan. So there again I was based for 2 years. This was before marriage. We were setting up a paint factory in a place called Gothan, which is about 2 hours drive from Jodhpur in Rajasthan. And that time the person who I was associated with, B.R. Ruia, he was the chairman of the company, elderly gentleman. So in the factory premise we had made a temple. Ruyas, they are very pious people, so he wanted a temple in the factory premise, and that was Hanumanji ka mandir.
Okay.
And so though I am not family to him, right, typically in these kind of companies is the family people who will do the pujas and do all that. So though I am not family, but he considered me as his grandson. And he said, Sunil, why don't you, they needed someone who was unmarried, or unke family mein there was nobody unmarried in terms of his sons and his grandsons,
because it's Hanumanji.
Because Hanumanji ka jo sthapna karni thi, usme they needed a person who was unmarried. So he said, though I was not the family, he said, why don't you sit? And I still remember I did that whole puja with so much of attention and care, in spite of the fact that I'm not sure, I was not sure what I was doing, but I still did it. And he really appreciated that. Even the pujari appreciated it. He said, जो भी बोला पहनने के लिए पहना, जो भी बोला करने के लिए किया, whatever.
This was in which year?
This was in,
I think you had just started work.
Yeah, I just started work. So that was 1986.
Okay.
Yeah, no, 1987, 88. That time.
But in terms of, despite being an agnostic and all these things, like you were familiar with like the stories, with the
somewhat because of my grandmother. Yeah, somewhat because of my grandmother, my dadi. And summer vacations we would normally spend in Aurangabad, which is with my nani.
Okay.
So
from your mother's side.
So my mother's side. So though she's a Marwadi, Nagoris, but she was born and brought up mainly in Aurangabad and Paitan, that region. So very fluent Marathi. When she speaks Marathi, you cannot make out that she's a Marwadi. Pakka Marathi. So because of Nani and Dadi, we kind of heard all these stories, and both were very pious ladies. But somehow my dad, I think because he had done his education abroad in terms of engineering, and then we were abroad for such a long time, he also was agnostic. And I think that runs in the family because his dad, that's my grandfather, we call him Bauji, so it was Bhabi, which is my grandmother, and Bauji. He was one of the most famous and lawyers in Mathura at that time, and he was handling many cases connected to temples and to people associated with temples. And I think because of that, he knew what was the inside story, and he had got very agnostic about the whole thing, right? Because as a lawyer, you have to disclose everything. So sometimes he was fighting, he was on this side, sometimes he was on that side. but he knew what was going on, and that kind of put him off. And I think that carried over to his sons.
I think when you get close enough, that changes the perception completely. Yeah.
So my dad, very strong in all his principles, but in terms of religious practices, it's not something which he kind of really did much. And so my mother also followed suit. So we would do the typical
the
pujas and
cultural
the Diwali puja and wo sab hota tha, but never seriousness into it or reading anything in terms of Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. Wo sab, that was never there. And then we had a lot of friends who were Christians, who were Muslims, because Singapore was cosmopolitan. He had studied abroad, so he had friends.
Even the US, I presume,
it's all cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
So
it's a very different kind of vibration from those things.
Yeah.
So coming back to IIT Bombay now, so I presume it was Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj.
No, I got connected to the devotees not in IIT.
Okay.
I got connected.
But did you know about the?
No. I didn't know about it.
But Gaurang Prabhu and
no, they were all came
before.
After.
Okay.
So he was same hostel as mine, hostel 6, but he came later.
So was Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj your peer or he was?
Yes, he was our peer in management.
Okay.
So I got to know about the devotees and ISKCON from Sanjeev Maheshwari, Sachidanand Prabhu. So Sanjeev is our first connect, and I think
is related to you, right?
Who?
Sanjeev.
No, he's not related.
Okay.
It may appear that because Anju, his wife, and Preeti are also very close. They're like sisters.
Yeah.
I think both of them are closer than I am to Sanjeev, actually. Generally, ladies get closer, right? So they have a lot of common interests. Yes. But and I'm happy that our first connect was to Sanjeev, and it was a very turbulent time. Okay. At that time, things were a little turbulent in ISKCON, right?
It was not a smooth ride.
It was not a smooth ride. So I'm so happy that we got connected to his family, because in those turbulent times, you need someone like their family who's so anchored, right, to spiritual and also to family and to social. A very balanced family. The parents, Sanjeev, Anju, all of them. And so it was very important for us to get linked or connect to such a family.
I think sometimes that fanaticism kind of can rub people the wrong way.
Yes.
But I think they were, I think they still are one of the best examples.
Yes. I still remember Achyut, at that time we had a little bit of, in the family, there was some, let's say, again, we were staying separately from my mother for some time, and Sanjeev would and his family would visit us. And that time we didn't know, kya offer karna hai. We were very new. So I still remember we would very innocently offer him chocolates. And he was, Kantimala double initiate, but he never ever made us feel that it is something that we should not offer. He so willingly accepted and he ate, and he never made a show of it. And sometimes that creates a greater impact than philosophy, right? So I still remember that, so vivid.
I think that's what I was trying to say about that Dubai experience as well. The faith of someone else can probably move you more than I can sit and lecture here for hours and hours regarding this is right and that is right, but unless someone practices it in person, I think that is a more moving experience than anything else.
Yes.
And as regarding Sanjeev Maheshwari Prabhu, he has, for me personally, he has been so helpful. I remember when I was having a tough time regarding my job, he intervened and he called for to talk about me to my seniors and ask, how are you utilizing him? He's not feeling good. Why are you not doing this, that, and the other? So he has always had that kind of.
He walks the extra mile.
He always does that, no matter what. He has been very supportive of my business ventures as well. He has always given the correct inputs.
Yes.
So actually, it's a very great connect we have.
Yes, he's and also his parents, his wife, of course. Again, she's also a very bubbly lady. Huh?
Yeah,
Again,
yes,
I kind of these people very effervescent, very bubbly, very active, very energetic. Always wants to do new things. She's an extremely good storyteller.
We are very dry people. We need them.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And Sanjeev is also, he's not dry, but he's different.
Yes,
he's very
yes.
sober.
Yeah.
And Anju is quite the opposite. But they both get very well along together.
Yes.
It's a great match. And his father, Srigauranga Prabhu, and Mataji, Sucharita Mataji. But they're also again very loving and caring people.
Yes.
Because I used to, when I went to Russia, we were already connected because we used to go to Khar, basically Mahaprabhu's house. So we used to go there, and so people knew us. And Maharaj also used to come at that time.
Yeah, Maharaj used to
he was
class.
coming class regular, and his kirtans.
Yes.
And we still remember the tune he used to sing. The Khar tunes were very set,
Yes.
and I think they're ingrained in everybody's heart and mind.
I think there's like some of the old tunes are very like Vrindavan and old school tunes.
Yes, old school tunes.
I think now it's very difficult to find them. No one sings that kind of style
Correct.
anymore.
So very simple, Maharaj would sing that.
Even the deities were Mahaprabhu's deities in the garage that he had.
Radha Vrindavan Natwar. And the setting was very different, right? You had railway tracks behind, and while Maharaj was singing, cut, 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 you'll have the trains coming, and the trains, they were not so frequent at that time because the frequency was less. And then you had people standing, there was a bridge, walkway bridge from east to west, and then you'll have people standing over there watching the program happening, right? So I still remember that vividly. And so as I was coming back to Srigauranga Prabhu, so when I was in Russia, and at that time I remember Preeti was with Prerna, and she was not well for a few days, and she had high fever, and I think they realized that, and she was alone with Prerna, and I was unable to do much from there, and they immediately, within a few days, because through Anju they got to know, and they came, they took her from the house that we were staying since she was alone, and they took her home to their place. They said, nothing doing, you cannot manage this, Sunil is not here, and more than what a responsible parent would do.
Their home was it?
Their home at that time was in Maroba Mansion in Khar.
Khar, okay.
Khar. And then they shifted to this, where they are currently in.
So Mataji stayed with them, huh?
For a few days. They took her, they nursed her, and unka ghar us time chota tha. I think they had only 2 bedrooms. So because she was unwell, auntie insisted that she would sleep on the bed, auntie would sleep down. So auntie slept down and made Preeti sleep on the bed because she was unwell, she had fever. So I mean, this is more than what average parents would do, right? So
even family members might think twice.
Exactly. So she was there for 2-3 days. She became well enough, and then she came back. But this is the kind of loving and caring attitude they have, and we were not so long in the movement at that time or so well known to them. ठीक है, संजीव को हम college से जानते थे. This is again
like when you started.
Yeah, so 84, 86 we were in college together, Sanjeev and myself, and during college.
Management.
Yeah, NMIMS, Villapada. And that's the time we kind of used to go to his home for programs. So there again, one thing about Sanjeev, he would call us every time there was a program. Giriraj Maharaj used to come, so many other people used to come. And 90% of the time he would say no. Because he had other things to do, so-called better things to do. He never ever had a negative comment whenever we said no, always smiling. He would never make you feel कि आपको मैं बुला रहा हूँ and you don't want to come. He makes you feel so comfortable, right? So he would, as if he would, next time he would tell you again, please come, without anything showing on his face कि I've asked you 10 times and you're not even come once. And that is so important, right? So important in terms of character. So people like Sanjeev he may not be giving classes and so on so much, but his behavior
Exemplary.
speaks louder than words.
Of course. Always. So it was programs were at his place or Mahaprabhu's?
Initially we went to his place,
Okay.
then we got connected to Khar.
Khar.
We were staying in Santa Cruz that time,
Ah.
Santa Cruz West. So it was close. It was convenient to go to his place, which was Khar, and then Mahaprabhu is near the station, and so it was easy to go.
What was the internal process like when you finally thought, I think I have to commit to this kind of
Okay,
lifestyle?
so yeah. So
I just want to understand in terms of what was the process like from trying to avoid going to the programs
Yes,
to
trying to
finally,
avoid.
kind of
after-
committing yourself to the.
So after a few times, and Mahaprabhuji being Mahaprabhuji, he has a very different style, right?
Very magnanimous.
Sanjeev has a different style, Srigauranga Prabhu has a different style, and Mahaprabhuji has a different style. So we were the beneficiaries of both styles, and I think that was good because you need both. So we were struggling with chanting. I still remember the first round that we did. In fact, this program which we had day before yesterday, Ram Navami in our society, we were also offering the beads. Few people came and said, "Yaar, ye itna lamba bead rakha hai, don't you have the small bead?" This bead looks like so long, right? 108, itna lamba rakha hai. So I remember that kind of triggered my thought that the first time when we chanted, Preeti and myself, he said like 108 it was like drudgery for us. ये 108 कब खत्म होंगे? Every mantra we chanted, and it was like a real struggle. The first round that we did, and we were on and off. Then Prerna was born. That was 1992. And when Prerna was born, then Preeti and myself, we were going for the programs, avoiding a lot, but still going. And when Prerna came into our life, then both of us said that if we want to, so we first thought that we should give her some kind of good spiritual, ethical upbringing, right? Combined, cultural, everything combined. So Preeti, actually she comes from a much more devotional family than my family. Other than my grandmother and my family, nobody is devotional, both mother side, father side. Preeti's parents, Preeti's father is from Mathura, Preeti's grandfather is from Mathura, and they're extremely devotional people. And Preeti comes from a very so like I have done everything under the sun in IIT, right? So I had to leave a lot of things. Preeti she came absolutely pure with in fact, she started eating onion garlic in her house.
Oh, okay.
At that time, we used
she
to
never ate before.
She never ate before.
Wow.
Or never ate means
Avoided for the most part.
no, in उनके घर में भोग लगता था. So it was not there, and she for a few years she was in Indore. वहाँ पे all this was not there, so she would eat, but non-veg तो out, eggs out. I had done everything. So in fact, I remember trying to convince her to eat eggs in our house. So she says, look, I came from here, and then I kind of experienced this, and then again we went back to. So for her it's been a roller coaster ride. So anyway,
but she was convinced by your convincing as well.
Not really, but because
she was reluctant.
She was reluctant, but she would do. So she was doing her internship at that time, and घर में बनता था तो अब जो बनता है खा लो.
Internships are not easy to get through.
Yeah,
you have to take what is given kind
exactly.
of.
And so she didn't eat egg, but जो भी घर में बनता था she would eat, and whatever she would get in the college. So as I was saying, so she comes from that background, right? Even though both are from Mathura, but very different upbringing and very different mindset, both of us.
Prerna was.
So Prerna was born in 1992. So both of us gave it a deep thought that we need to give her some kind of good foundation, right? Which also had some spiritual aspects and cultural, social, religious, whatever you want to call it. And then the next thing was that if we want to give it to her, and if we are not practicing, then how can we, what kind of example will we give her? So it's like saying ki we don't want to do it, but we want her to do it. So that's the time, that was the trigger, and maybe that's the reason why her name is Prerna, which is inspiration.
Yeah.
So it's because of her that we decided to become serious. He said, let's give this a shot. Preeti had seen it because her grandfather, for example, he used to stay in Mathura, so he would never ever eat a meal before he went and had a bath in Yamuna Ji. They were staying close to Yamuna. So she came from that kind of lineage, right? So that's what we chose, and so we're still around. But that was the inspiration.
That is amazing.
That we'll give it a try, and we'll give it a fair try. 2-3 साल देखते हैं.
Commit to it properly.
We'll try for 2-3, and if we feel that it's not working out, छोड़ देंगे. I mean, what's the big deal, right?
So at that time, your counselor or your mentor was
at that time we used to have common meetings of counselor meetings, counseling meetings of Srigauranga Prabhu, Mahaprabhu ji, and Raghunath Prabhu.
Yes.
Rajesh Talwar. So again, three different personalities, right? And so
they are alphas in their own regard, all three of them.
So we used to have common meetings. Then once the group became large, then it was Mahaprabhu and Srigauranga Prabhu,
right,
and for our counselor meeting. And then we shifted to Kandivali, to Viceroy Park. So then the association became a little less.
So you shifted it when nothing was there in Thakur village.
Kind of in the not that time. No, it was not that early, but I think 2002.
Still early.
Still early. We shifted in 2002.
So you could see the national park from.
Kind of. Yeah. And we had heard of stories of leopards and so on. So we shifted that time. So that time, then our association became a little less. But we were connected to the temple, to Radha Gopinath, so we would go there regularly. But council meetings became a little less because Ana Jana. And I was involved in some startups at that time. So
and I think traveling.
It's very intense. The startups were very intense. So.
No, once the professional life takes over, you kind of have to balance it out.
Correct.
So till now, I mean, I remember we moved here, like I moved to Thakur village, Kandivali, from 2010. I think you were already 8 years in at that point.
Yep, you were already 8 years old.
Yeah. So, and I think in this house it was 2016. My father moved here, I think. So at that point, my father said you were handling all of the preaching and everything on your own.
That's he kind of if a person is doing so much, your father says he's doing so much. That's his great quality and his style. It was not that we were involved with the group who was here.
But you had like Ramnavami celebrations we did and all. You were doing that here, right?
No, we had nothing happening in Viceroy Park.
Okay.
Viceroy Park was like a desert. It's your father who brought in the oasis. Not your father, it's your family actually. Mataji also is very active. So after he came is when the small creeper has been planted in Viceroy Park, which is now growing slowly. But before that, it was basically in Thakur village. We used to have a program in Thakur complex. Okay. Every Saturday, Sunday, something. Saturday.
I think Gaurang Prabhu also came few times.
Many people used to come, and then it shifted to Thakur village. In Viceroy Park, we had a few programs where Gaurang Prabhu came.
Mm-hmm.
He came once, somebody else came. We used to do it, we had it on the terrace of the clubhouse.
Okay.
But it was just kind of to have a program.
Mm-hmm. Who were the kind of the Grihastha devotees at that time? Or were they like all younger generation?
It was mainly all younger generation. We used to interact with Sitanath Prabhu.
Right. Okay.
And Mataji, they were in Thakur complex.
They lived there,
Yeah. And Sridhama Prabhu also to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the names I remember. And there were many others also.
From there to now, I think like really in 7 years you have really done so much within Kandivali itself. I think like there was of course so many things happened together where kind of the base devotees also joined in, and
Yes.
the younger generation kind of came in. There were a few professors in Thakur College.
Correct.
They supported us.
Yes.
So
And then, of course, Brajbari Prabhu was very active at that time,
Yes.
and he's again a phenomenal devotee in terms of the way he presents and the way he structures his programs.
amazing intellectual capability.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing.
And I think there were a few big programs that time in Thakur College, if I'm not wrong, like Janmashtami and all these things, where like I think we still continue it to this day, where we book the entire hall
Yeah.
for Janmashtami. It started during that time.
It started during that time. We had started in the small hall, the first Janmashtami. Again, your dad, Madhan Prabhu, was very instrumental in that, because it's just like an idea which came that we should have a Janmashtami festival right, in Thakur village. Mandir mein jo hota hai wo to theek hai, but if you can't, there's that saying, right, if you can't take someone to the mountain, then you bring the mountain. So if you can't take people to the temple on Janmashtami, let's bring Janmashtami to them. So that was the mood. And the first one was in the clubhouse of Valley of Flowers.
Yes.
Krishna Prabhu. Yeah, so I forgot to mention Krishna Kumar, Hemant. So Hemant and myself are very close because he's also IIT Bombay, Hostel 6. But we didn't know each other that time, but we did some business together.
He was also living here only. Right?
Yeah. So we did some business together,
Yeah.
right? Almost 4 or 5 years. So his family is also very close to us. And he was very active even at that time. So that's how we did it in the clubhouse of.
But now you are
Valley
actively involved more than ever. So please tell us what are all the activities you are doing.
So now we are doing a few things to.
I know there is a Saturday program.
So the Saturday program has restarted again. It was in COVID times, it had stopped. So the Saturday program is driven primarily by Rupali Mataji and the team. I'm part of that team. So there is a Saturday program which has been quite regular now for the last I think about 6 months. And we also have a program at our home, generally supposed to be on the first Sunday of the month, which is for people from Viceroy Park and a few other societies, but it's more of a cultivation program, right? Again, the suggestion of Madhavan Prabhu only that we should have such programs. And then we have a Monday program, which is a nourishment program for the core team, which is working on all the initiatives in Thakur village.
There's a big, I think, counseling group also now from here. You are there, Vineet Dongre Prabhu is there.
Yes. So we are all in different groups.
Yes.
So he's in a different counseling group. I'm still connected to Sehdev Prabhu. There are others who are connected. So it's a
common
quite a mishmash over here. So that's one thing I've learned interacting with Madhavan Prabhu and others, is that when you read Prabhupada's books, right, philosophy is there, all that is there. It's all perfect and it's the highest, and I don't think in any other religious movement or scripture can you find the richness and the depth which is there in Prabhupada's books. Okay? Not that I've read too many, but after reading you can make out how deep it is. But in spite of all that depth, one of his instructions I found is something which will keep this movement growing for the next, ISKCON that is, for the next 10,000 years, is cooperation. Because if you don't cooperate, if you don't work together, irrespective of our difference, because there's always going to be differences. Har ek ka style alag hai.
That's the truth of life. Cannot get away from
even within the home, between husband, wife, children also, right? So if we
even within ourselves, there are.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, today I'm this way, tomorrow I'm something else. Or with you I behave this way, with somebody else I behave another way. Very, very important statement you made. We don't realize that.
Yeah.
So if we can't cooperate, then things don't work. Irrespective of how good you may be, a fund collector, a book distributor, or an orator, or well known in the Shastras, it doesn't work. And relationships with devotees is really the most important. That's sacrosanct. If So if that is there, everything else will fall in place. This is what, again, and Maharaj has the same mood. Madhavan Prabhu also has the same mood, which he and that same mood you can see percolates in the hospital, where he's the director. It percolates in his counsel group, and it's also percolating here in Thakur village in what we do. So where relationships takes precedence over anything else.
Yeah, I had just one question, Prabhuji. What was it like kind of setting up the first Tulsi Vivaha program? I wanted to know the story behind that. Because now it's become like this thing where everyone comes.
It's a nice program actually.
Yeah,
it's a nice program because our setting is so nice.
Yeah.
The lawns, the swimming pool behind, and the beautiful decoration done by
and
the
I
lady
think
group.
Couples themselves are interested to sit for the puja.
Sit for the puja, absolutely. So the first Tulsi Vivaha, I think your dad, Madhavan Prabhu, kind of 4 days before he comes and says, "Ye karna hai." I said, "We can't do it." That's my first reaction. I'm an engineer, right? Engineer, MBA, so I'm very structured. Checklist होना चाहिए, plan होना चाहिए, ये होना चाहिए. I think more of the things will go wrong than will go right. That's the way I am, and I'm trying to change. In the sense, I'm trying to transform, evolve, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes I tend to be over perfectionist, and it doesn't work, right? So my first reaction was, 4 दिन में कुछ नहीं हो सकता. So then I think then he spoke to my wife. Preeti.
To get through to you.
Yes. So she said, yes, why not? She is the type of person ki bhai, he is saying he's empowering, so it can be done. Why don't you have faith in that? So I kind of believe in my own powers. कि वो मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? And I felt I can't do it. Because fund collection, getting all the arrangements, all that, and I didn't know that. I mean, I couldn't fathom that he comes with all this experience from Mira Road. I mean, for him, this is like chutki bar. He can possibly do it even 1 day in advance, right? Because he's done so many things there. I could not fathom that. So I thought, कि बस ये तो हो नहीं सकता है. So I pushed back a lot. I still remember. But then I reluctantly agreed.
Thanks to Mataji.
Yes, thanks to Preeti, and then of course he was extremely involved, and your mother, she was also very actively involved. So she took care of all the decoration, the setup, and so on, and he fat arranged for the pujari and all those vidhi ke jo saman hai. My primarily my activity was kind of, he was not so involved in the society. Yeah. Busy as he is, and he was new, right? We were staying here. Preeti especially, she's a doctor. Yes. So she knew more people than I did. Because again, I was also in a startup and very busy with work, so I was not really interacting too much with you. Plus, sometimes we go through that phase where we are unable to balance social life and spiritual life, right? We think that cutting off social connections is a good indication of how spiritually advanced we are.
Spiritual growth, yes.
But I realized that that's not the case. So I think I was also going through that phase. So she knew more people, and so she immediately reached out, and we also tried to put our hand at asking people to contribute, कुछ poster बनाए, वो सब किया.
What was the reaction like from the
residents?
Because now I know, because now I've been going on for 7 years.
I was pleasantly surprised. I was expecting, just like I was pushing back, I was expecting residents will not really appreciate it. ये क्या कर रहे हो, ये पुराना, we are trying to get these old systems back. And I was pleasantly surprised when many families in which husband is a little agnostic, I won't take names. Wife is whatever, they're both working professionals, IT professionals, and they said, we used to do this, हमारे गांव में ये हमने 20 साल पहले देखा है. And so they were very positively looking forward to it. And in fact, they're the first couple who came and sat in the puja. Right? So I was surprised. So it's there. So we realized when you reach out to people genuinely, people are actually hungry and thirsty for this. because they've seen it. At least हमारा generation.
Yes.
Your generation की बात अलग है. So Nimai Prerna's generation is different, but our generation and especially the one and a half generation above us, they've seen all this. तब तक था.
Or at least heard about it.
At least heard about it, right.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was well received, and ever since then, it's kind of evolved. We've tried to add more activities. We've tried to
now it's taken a
improve it.
thing kind of which everyone looks forward to every year.
Yes. It's now society mein they know the Tulsi Vivah abhi standard ho gaya. It's a part of Viceroy Park.
Yes.
And in Thakur village, because people also, the other devotees like to come.
Yes.
And
I mean, I remember Ram Navami, we just had it few days back. Everyone from Thakur village had come.
yes,
And,
the devotee circle.
yeah.
And they also know, because Rupali Mataji, she is like a one woman army. One thing she never compromises on is on prasad. She is a good cook herself, that's a separate issue. But for her, prasad should be 5-star top class. Right? So that is also a grand attraction for our programs that we have.
And lastly, Prabhuji, I want to know, because I am just saying because I know what you are doing, but you are trying to reconnect now back to Barsana and all these places, because you are doing so much seva there.
No, I'm not doing so much seva there as it
What
appears
you are
externally.
very humble, Prabhuji, but
No,
it's not an easy thing what you are doing there.
No, it's not. So I think I have been.
And
Okay,
personally,
I'm not sure how candid I should be here, right?
no, I'm just saying personally from my experience, because I know the people you are working with, and I know the projects you are involved in, and it's not an easy task to kind of get through that.
Yeah,
And you're kind of headstrong in it, just managing.
So I'll take the liberty of being partly candid.
Feel free, no force.
I'm not sure how candid I should be, but still I'll take the liberty of partly candid. I have been, my association with ISKCON for so many years, bits and pieces I've been actively engaged, but because of my travel and my work, I was not really involved heavily in any one particular project, except Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj got us all together when we started Venu Madhuri.
Okay.
So we were all involved as trustees, and so that's something which I've been.
What was that particular?
Venu Madhuri is Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj's brainchild. It's basically rural development and cultivation. So Roop Vilas Prabhu, Rahul Deshpande, he's the one who's been the main driver on the ground. He's an environmental background person, and this is in a place called Ramanwadi near Kolhapur.
Okay.
So
But he has a similar project in Belgaum, right?
Yes, so Belgaum is a little different. Ramanwadi is basically a village. Belgaum project is our own property. It's like a I mean it's a close community. Ramanwadi, Venu Madhuri is a village. So we have got got involved in the village and tried to try to cultivate them. So now there are a number of initiated devotees there. There are a number of projects which have been done there in terms related to water, agriculture, animal husbandry, cow protection. But that project in terms of involvement was there from day one. Still involved, not so much, but it was something where I can call it, it's not my baby, but I've been there since inception. Not too many projects like that, within ISKCON. So I think I've been floating that I need to get latched on somewhere, and I should thank Anusuya Mataji, that's Anju Maheshwari. She had posted something about the Barsana Eye Hospital on our WhatsApp group. And I read that, and when I read it, so she talked about the hospital being set up. I said, wow, this is Barsana and we are from Mathura, so kuch to karna chahiye. So I then reached out immediately to Madhavan Prabhu, And I said, this project, is it done? What? So I was happy to know that it's kind of
Just
construction
started,
shuru nahi hua hai, start hua hai.
started.
It's been going on for a long time. The ICAMs, we never went for any of them, right? But so he said, he immediately connected me to Vishnu Prabhu. So then Preeti and myself went and met him, and he told us about the project, and we were so, it was an eye opener that a person like Vishnu Prabhu can be so dedicated. He's a Brajvasi actually. In Braj, if you go, he's one of them. He's not a Mumbaiite, right? He knows everybody over there so well. Everybody knows him, respects him, honors him. And a person from Bombay to have that kind of respect and regard from Braj, it's
They
incredible.
consider him as one of them.
Yes, they consider him one of them.
And
Absolutely.
he's a Maharashtrian Brahmin born and brought up in South Bombay.
Yes. मतलब उनके सुख दुख में they are part of his family. They are his extended family in Braj. Some of the people who I've interacted with over there. So he kind of gave us a update on the project.
What was it like to work with him on a professional
basis? His dedication and enthusiasm is what I'm hoping will rub off on me a little bit. He's totally dedicated to this project. So consistently organizing the ICAM, being involved, making sure it happens, enthusing people to come for the ICAM in the winter, in those kind of conditions. I mean, conditions are much better now. I've heard stories of what it was at that time and what people have gone through in terms of the facilities, the prasadam, travel to serve in these ICAMs. Much better now. Now it's like, I would say
now it's
5-star,
kind
but
of like we have our place.
we have a place and things, the systems are in
Yeah.
place, prasadam is in place. So I told him we'd like to get involved, and he said, "ठीक है." So there is some work related to the website and donor management.
For donor management, for anyone who's watching, kind of,
Yeah.
what can they do to help the project?
So what we are, I try to think I'm creative, right? So we try to think a little bit out of the box, and unlike not your generation, but हम लोग कुछ सोचते हैं. So we are working on this program called Priya Anusmaran, loving remembrance, and so if one wants to, people who are from the family who have passed away, to create, so we are trying to create a program where the family can try to increase their loving remembrance of a person by doing two things. One is making a digital asset, which would be pictures and some memories of the person, which can be carried on for generations. I realize I'm trying to do this for my father in this program, and it's not easy to collect images. Na? Abhi ki baat alag hai, but my father, they're all hard copies, right? So get them, scan them, or whatever, and even to get hold of them, so many, like my chachas, chachis, unke paas hai, nahi hai, getting it from them. So even getting 50 images together is not easy, especially if they're hard copies. Digital ki baat alag hai. So one is creating that memory through a digital initiative, and the second is a memorial for him in the hospital by either sponsoring something, either equipment or maybe a doctor's room, or whatever, depending on what the budget is.
Right.
Anything from XYZ to 10x can be done. So basically creating that, which again will be remembered by generations.
Right.
So this is a program which we are working on to see if we can put this together. And the others, of course, is that one can contribute for individual cataract operations, because so we have, one is the construction of the hospital which is going on, second is the cataract operations which are already going on in a setup that we have in Radha Madhav. So one can contribute either way. And one thing which did strike me, which really hit me hard, and why I thought that I should give more time and energy to this project is that in today's day and age, if a person has to go blind due to cataract, it's sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad. Because it's totally unavoidable, right?
And
Totally
with all the treatments available.
Totally preventable.
Yes.
But due to lack of knowledge, that the person doesn't know that this can be treated, and not comfortable in moving out of Barsana or that area, Mathura bhi nahi jayenge, because they say, you know, this is the mood of the
I
Brajavasis
think
is
it's
such.
like more of an acceptance ki this happens with age. or
It's okay to
whatever.
get blind by this,
Yes.
but because of that they become dependent.
Yeah.
They can't worship. So it's a great project in terms of seva for the Brajavasis, and something which as I said, which hit me hard was that it's preventable and it's still happening.
Right.
And we are hoping that. So I also have interests in other than my professional interest, which is IoT, Internet of Things, in whichever way I can help any project. But I have interest in environment and social work, social related. So at some point of time, we are hoping that in Barsana we can also try to bring some change.
Right.
Through
Like kind of raising the awareness.
raising awareness, doing some small projects. I don't know, but it's not easy to work in these places, okay? Because they're political hotspots.
And I think the people are set in their ways, and you know, it's not in a negative way, but it's just that if you're trying to give something good, it is not easy.
Because I think they look at you with a different lens,
Yeah.
Because we are not Brajavasis, we are
Yes.
outsiders, so they think that we are actually coming in to take something from and not to give them something.
Yeah.
Maybe not but today, but definitely a little later.
Yes.
We'll take out more than we'll give.
Yes.
So, but we hope that I hope that we can also contribute in those fronts through the medium of the eye hospital. Yes.
This is great, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure interacting with the younger folk.
I want to learn from you, from other devotees. That's why I am doing this personally.
That's a nice way of putting it.
आपने जो बोला chanting का ये वो, it all struck with me very well. I feel the same way all the time. So when someone senior, someone who is a practicing devotee, who is involved so much in preaching, also says that, you know, it gives people hope. There is a way. It's like a hopeless condition type of a situation.
I'll just end with two things. I mean, though we have heard this in lectures and in books, Prabhupada's books, I think ever since COVID struck, Preeti and myself have made it we have become more regular in reading together. Right? And when one reads and discusses, now it's not easy to discuss, you know, husband wife, I'll tell you that, even on spiritual topics. वो श्लोक पढ़ेंगे, you know, she will say something, both tangent, totally tangent, right? But whatever it is, but that interaction of reading Prabhupada's books, the purports, it could be just 10-15 minutes, just 1 or 2 shlokas a day, it doesn't matter. That brings immense amount of clarity and appreciation for Prabhupada's stuff, right? And when we read these, we can now realize that when he said that my books are the law books of the next 10,000 years, the way that Prabhupada has presented his purports are applicable today. They were applicable when he was around, they're applicable today, and they'll be applicable 50 years, 100 years, 2,000 years, 10,000 years ahead, because it's all there. We need to see what to take out and how to present and how to package. It's all there actually. So and
how to apply it for
ourselves. So strong recommendation, and I hope I can also continue, is reading at least little bit and discussing.
Right.
If with your spouse and with the family if possible, but with your spouse. So both of us discuss. Kabhi Nimai is there, he sunta hai. So the discussion also kind of spills over to him, and whatever it is, right? But this is super critical. That if one can do that, and of course being involved in some project, seva, all the other stuff is there. But this is something which which has really struck us now. And I also do a little bit of journaling, which this is something which I kind of got passed down from Brajbihari Prabhu. So that journaling or writing is again makes you think. It's easy to speak.
Right.
It's 10 times more difficult to write. So I'd like to just add these as the sign off.
Thank you so much, Roji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.